Well, maybe Frank Caliendo has some advice on how to handle all this. Let's see. Let's bring in the great Frank Caliendo here to Sports 1140 KHK. This is Drive. Frank, how are you?
Great for the situation. Who are you guys bringing on?
State Senator Dr. Richard Pan. We're bringing him on at 8:30. We're dumb, and Facebook is dumb, and that's where a lot of people get their info. We wanted to bring on somebody smart, Frank, that could answer questions people had.
No, that's great. I've been seeing a lot of different people doing that, and I think that's the way to go. And let me continue this boring part of my interview by asking you about other interviews you're doing. All right.
Unless you want to be our doctor expert.
It's Adam Sandler is a doctor. Don't listen to anything Frank says.
Frank, you do. I said this yesterday. I texted Frank this last night. Jason, you'll back me up. I said if there was a radio partner draft, Frank would be the number one pick.
Yes.
Because of his uncanny abilities, not just to do impressions, but to be funny when he's doing the impressions. You do radio appearances, and I'm curious, how often, percentage-wise, would you say over the years when you go on with a morning show, for example, how often do you get like the kind of fake clapping, like, hey, it's Frank Caliendo, and then does it bother you?
You know what, the weirdest thing, that's the most interesting question anybody's probably ever asked me. I thought you were coming straight away with the how many times does somebody just make you do impressions?
Right.
They played Geppetto, and... and I'm sitting there as Bill Belichick, got no strings. You know, that kind of a thing. I constantly, but that's a radio device. I don't feel terrible about that because it's a way to break people into the interview and way to the room. Yeah. Maybe the weird one is when people say the man, the myth, the legend, or the legendary Frank Caliendo. Sometimes it sounds like I'm a circus performer, and sometimes I just sound like a magician. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Frank Caliendo. And I come out and do a card trick.
On the radio.
Yes.
Yeah. The narrator is Morgan Freeman, and that's when they had their attention diverted toward the pretty lady.
Well, how does it happen for you in public then? Because obviously you're so incredibly skilled at it.
Frank, do the impression of the guy doing the thing.
Right. So when you're out and about, it's like, you can entertain people, but also it's like you might just be out and about and you just want to go on with your life. How often does that happen to you?
Well, normally people don't recognize me because they expect me to be John Madden because of having seen me do the John Madden. So they expect me to be 6'2", 6'3", maybe 300 pounds-ish kind of a person because they think I do these big impressions of big people, and they see me and I'm 5'6", and I'm not as fat as I used to be, and they're like, "Oh, this is it? Can you still do? John Gruden for us?" I'll tell you what, man, that's tremendous right there. Yeah, you still got it, man.
Have you? I want to, before we get too into what we're doing. You have finally hit the sweet spot with your Twitter. And that's not to discount what you've done with Twitter to this point, but you've found the niche. I think you know that with your videos that you're doing and combining those voiceovers. And one very cool addition is, listen, the Skywalker family, the Force runs through them. You see this all the time. Talent runs through the genes, and your daughter's got it, and you're my buddy, Frank. I told you this on Twitter. You may need to push her aside a little bit because you still need to make money, and she's going to take your market share.
Yeah, but I can have her be Gary Coleman, and I can just steal her money, right?
You still control it.
Yeah, see, that's the situation. Hey, we're gonna be spending this on Daddy, and we can't even go out anymore. What can you do? What can you spend money on that I could talk about with a child? Think about that.
I have a 12-year-old daughter. How old is Juliet?
Juliet's 13 in 8th grade and she's having the time of her life.
So I'm curious because my daughter, she's starting to edge into that phase of, Daddy, I'm obsessed with you. You're my hero. You're everything to me. I want to do everything with you. She's starting to get into that. Daddy, you're stupid. Oh, my God, this is dumb. And your daughter's a year ahead of mine. Not all kids are the same, but was there trepidation at first? Did Daddy have to kind of pump her up and get her confidence going, or did she just naturally take to it?
Years ago, I said to Juliet, "Do you want to be an actress?" She goes, "No, I want to be a star." I was like, "Okay, all right, we're in trouble." But she was, a little bit nervous about trying it, and she didn't do it. But then I showed her the views, and all of a sudden she cared a lot. But she didn't even have social media until this past year. So it's my son who's actually the one I wish would be on more with me. He's only done a couple little things, but he probably 6 months ago now, and he is 15. He's a sophomore in high school, and I said, "Hey, do the Gruden." He looks over at me, does the face, and goes, "I'll tell you what, man." And I was like, "Whoa, Barry White Gruden! Holy cow! When did your voice get that?" So it was really cool. But for Christmas we were going to all three do it, and then he decided he didn't want to. He's saving it for something even bigger. I'm like, "How about the apocalypse? Because we're there right now, man." Don't believe Caliendo. The doctor's coming up at 8:30, man. Listen to that guy.
That's
you know what? The social media, part of the social media thing is, Pat McAfee, right? Pat had got me going on that, and part of it is doing a podcast. I started doing a podcast, and the way to let people know about podcasts, and it's only available after you guys are off the air. But see, I did that.
I do.
Well
I
done.
appreciate
well
that.
Done.
It's after 9. Thanks for looking out for us, Frank.
But we're goofy, and it's ridiculous. It was supposed to be like a sports podcast, but it just became me and a guy named John Holmberg, who's a big radio guy here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
The big radio guy, and he probably does even more impressions than I do, and he just got me trying hard again. So I was, you said I was off of Twitter for a little bit. I was off, not even off of Twitter, but not really. You were being nice about it. I basically left Twitter for 5 or 6 years because people were so angry on it, but I didn't know you could mute people that don't follow you.
Yep.
So that's what I do now, and I just block anybody who says anything that like when people give me critiques on impressions, gone. I call it social media distancing. That's my new deal. The podcast is the Caliendo Cast, and CaliendoCast.com is where you can get it right now, and it's available for everything. And at Frank Caliendo on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook as well. If you can't spell Caliendo, it's the letter C, the word alien, and the word do. So at Frank C. Alien do.
Never thought of that way.
Wow, I never did either.
Yeah, right?
Frank Caliendo, the legendary, mythical...
the man, the myth, the legend.
The walking god. Frank Caliendo joining us. That's the fake applause.
Hold on, I'm going to make the Statue of Liberty disappear as Morgan Freeman. And that's when they realized that they just turned the camera.
We were in Phoenix a week ago, Jason and I, and
you were?
Yeah, sorry. No, we were.
You gotta let me know, man.
I know. No, for real. That we were there Sunday through Wednesday, and it was crazy. That was the week they shut everything down. They shut it down the day before we left in the clubhouse, and for the A's, we were down there for that. We were at breakfast with an old friend of ours, Craig Amazine, who works down there now and who knows Holmberg really, really well. So he brought up at breakfast out of the blue. He goes, "Have you heard Holmberg and Frank doing their thing on the podcast?" I said, "As a matter of fact, yeah." And he went on, I won't bore you with it, it probably would be boring for you, but he went on with how amazing it was, how he has a long background with Holmberg, and said that the marriage of you two is completely perfect. And it was the day before dude, the thing you did when you were dueling Bernie Sanders or Sandys and you touched fingers, like I dirtied myself. It was perfect. Frank.
And then he somehow got into talking Reese's Pieces. We were actually calling it the wrong thing. We called it Reese's Pieces touching fingers like E.T. And I was in a bicycle in a basket, and Elliot was driving me across the moon. Can you drive a bicycle? I'm not sure. Touch fingers. Turn on your hot light.
It's classic, dude.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's just everything, because we get some people that'll listen to it the first time, and I try to slow it down at the beginning. Because people will listen to it at the beginning and be like, they're all over the place and they're crazy. Well, yeah, but that's the point. That's what makes us different, is that we'll just go off on tangents sometimes and try and bring it back, because it's just a playground. John is an amazing radio host. And you know how, as you know, that job can be tough because you have to go, you have to be regimented to get to breaks. And even though you have producers and stuff like that, when he comes and sits with me, he is in the second chair and just has a blast, which is what I usually do with him. So as I've been learning to host, whenever I falter and don't have something or everything isn't clicking, he can just go into autopilot and fill in, and it still seems like it's my show, but he just fixed it for a while. And people don't even realize that, but I tell him all the time, thank you, because I couldn't grow the way I've been doing it, and it started to take off. We've had some guests, and we're working on an animation. We did an interview with John Lovitz a while ago, and we were working on an animation, just putting that together because he didn't want to come over. He's like, I'm not coming, and then 2 hours later, I don't want to leave.
So with that,
and
Frank,
John, he and I are all three going, well, jealous.
So Frank, on your how much of that is you mentioned, like for radio for John, it's regimented. So how much of this is even percentage of it is scripted, or just you guys just vamping?
It's just talking, and it swirls out. A lot of times it gets out of control in some way or another. But
that's the beauty.
Yeah, that's the fun of it. I'm not going for that, but it's what happens. So there is not much scripted to it at all. We've tried to have like little benchmark moments where we do like a sketch, but I thought, I'm going to put most of those on the internet, and I'm trying to get John to do some more internet stuff because he does some of the weirdest impressions. He does Mad Dog from Mike and the Mad Dog. Mad Dog.
Yes.
He's I want to listen to Mad Dog. It just goes crazy, and there's so much fun to watch that I even stop. So, and when you get one of the fun things is people don't know when it's me talking sometimes and him, and some people I can tell the difference between a lot of our impressions. Some of them you can't. But sometimes, like the Bernies, I listen to it back and I'm like, you don't know who's talking when. So
right, which is great,
and which is what we want. It's the idea is Donald Trump will keep talking. I'm talking right now. Now I'm talking, and now I'm talking. Now it's me, Bernie, doing an impression of Donald Trump. I've been doing that the entire time. I beat you to it. So you don't even know who's talking when, and that I think gets some people crazed. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's what it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to know who's doing the impression. That's part of it.
Frank Caliendo with us, and we try with you because we've known you forever. We don't do the dance, and we don't do the canned applause. But there is one question. I know you've been asked this a billion times. I've never asked you this, Frank, and I get asked to ask you this when you're trying to tackle an impression, whomever it may be, without, I'm sure it would probably be hours, but just your Cliff's Notes. How do you start? Are you in front of a mirror? How do you go from point A to perfecting that impression for a new person?
Well, okay, for example, and John and Holberg and I have both been working on Jim Nance. We do is we talked about this on our podcast. I'm sorry to keep bringing it up, but it's almost a lesson in it on the podcast when we had Kevin Pollak on a couple episodes ago, and we go into a lot of this. So John and I will text each other back and forth. We'll just send voice memos to each other or voice recordings on our iPhones and just play them back and forth. And we actually work on them together a lot. And Pollak talks about how that maybe he's done that with you. I'm guessing he's done it with you before, but how he would send them back and forth with Dana Carvey.
Yeah.
So it's a lot that. A lot of times I work on the voice first now. I used to work on the faces with the mirror all the time first. But I found that the internet likes to have, which is where I've been trying to grow, the internet likes the impression to be closer to on the money than the cartoon version that I like to do, which is more that Dana Carvey world. So younger people don't seem to get, the people that really pass stuff around don't seem to get that caricature vibe. They like the dead on. So, for example, I've been working on Jim Nance, and I won't be able to do it right now because it takes me a while. But I would say, and once again, hello, friends. I just keep doing that. Hello, friends. Hello, friends. Just over and over and over until I get, the hello, friends. Jim Nance, along with my pal, Tony Romo. Tony! So my favorite thing is that's the little bit I'm going to work on for it is when Jim Nance gets excited, it's like somebody's playing with the speed and volume dial. It's like, Tony! Headed to the sideline! And then, of course, Tony Romo. You could never see a movie with Tony Romo because, oh, Jesus, incredible. What's going to happen here? It's going to turn out that kid's been dead the entire time, Jim.
Right? He's always spoiling it.
He is.
He's always
spoiler alert.
Watch this magic trick, Jim. This is going to be incredible, amazing. Incredibly amazing and amazingly incredible. I'm going to hug him and kiss him and love him forever, Jim.
Frank, has anyone bought into your stuff more than Gruden? I mean, he seems to have totally accepted it, welcomed you. You guys seem to share a great bond. Is he the one that loves your stuff more than any of them?
Yeah, probably, because I think I made him more likable and lovable. Like, people only saw that tough side of him. They didn't see the fun side. They didn't get it when he was being funny. So when he messes it with, that's one of the things, when people see that you can laugh at yourself, they have a whole new level of love for you. So Gruden's taking that on. You know, he texted me one time a few years ago. He's like, I just got done shooting a commercial where I did an impersonation of you, and I was too scared to ask him which one it was. And also, it was 3:00 in the morning.
Of course, of course it was.
So he. So, yeah, Barkley's been another guy that says, like, Frank, you got to keep doing it. Why is that? Because every time I do it, I end up making more money. I get a new commercial every time, knucklehead. So he's one. I remember Morgan Freeman on the Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon's like, hey, do you like when people do impressions of you? No. One of those. I laughed so hard there because it was one of those moments that I had a chance for something great. No, it wasn't great at all. One of my favorites, but the impressions. Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki in the Avengers, he does a lot of great impressions.
Really?
I was at look it up. He does some fantastic ones. And I go to these Comic-Cons. My daughter loves Marvel movies, so I take her to like Ace Comic-Con. And how much time do we have? Because I have two fun stories.
No, we got about 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay, I've got about 8 minutes of story. So, but I will magically work that into 4 minutes. So Tom Hiddleston is there, and I don't know if he knows me, but the agent brings him over to me because the agent knew who I was, and he's like, yes, hello. I was like, hey, I do a bunch of impressions. He's like, no, but please don't. I was like, you do impressions too? He's like, no. And he was so nice and so gracious. He's like, yes, I do impressions of people I work with in movies. I was like, oh, well, I do impressions of people I've seen in movies. So we're really similar.
Right.
But I wish I was you. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then he came walking by. He's like, and how's your Tom Hiddleston impression going? My daughter's like, how's your friend Tom Hiddleston now? Which my daughter is from a 50s movie, by
the way. Of course, yeah, see? How's Tom, yeah?
The other story is, so I had this video, and it's on my Instagram and stuff, I think, or somewhere, of Josh Brolin talking about he and Oliver Stone watching me to learn how to do the George W. Bush impression for the movie W. So it's one of those things I just have on my phone on favorites and bring it up just as a common, regular conversation. Hey, just flip it through my phone here. Look what popped up. Josh Brolin talking about Oliver Stone and the fact that they watched me for that movie. So Josh Brolin is at one of these Comic-Cons. We go there to see him. Turns out I have the same agency, but he's so busy it's tough to get in there. We finally get in to meet him. Chris Evans is standing there at the same time, Captain America.
Yeah.
And my daughter wanted to talk to him the whole time, too, obviously.
Sure.
And so Josh Brolin we had gone to take a picture with him. He had this look on his face like, I know you. Why do I know you? And later he told me, he's like, I didn't believe it was actually you, Frank. I thought this, why would you be here? So he's like, Chris, this guy is responsible for one of my biggest roles. And Evans is like, really? What movie? Or what role? And Josh Brolin didn't have a time to say because I went Thanos, and they all start cracking up. And Chris Evans then goes, "Wait a second, who are you?" I was like, "Frank Caliendo." He goes, "Oh my God!"
No way.
Quoting things from my act. He's like, "When you do a little man, here's a guy that's hilarious, man." He starts going crazy, and my daughter's like, "This is," and they're trying to get back to taking pictures. Evan's like, "Wait a second, we got more to talk about here." So then we leave the little area where they take the pictures, and Chris Evans sees me again. He's like, "Hey, dude," and we start talking for a little bit, and my daughter goes, "This is the greatest day of my life." I'm like, "Why is that?" She goes, "First of all, you know Captain America, and Captain America knows you. And second, and she knows the difference between but that's what she just loves these movie characters, and she's kind of saying it tongue in cheek. And then she goes, and the second time he didn't have to talk to you. He wanted to talk to you. He was stopping what he was doing. He wanted to talk to you. I can't wait to go brag to my friends.
And there you are, and you're the hero. And did you tell Chris Evans you really enjoyed him in not another teen movie, or would that have been awkward? Because that's my favorite. Chris Evans
I didn't realize he was in that.
Yeah, he's the quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to go back. It's weird. I realized that a couple of years ago. Jason, I love that movie. Completely spaced that he was the main.
Wait a second. Is that do they have a Nacho Libre guy in there?
Do they? I don't
think so.
Guys, he's the one in that movie that did the spoof on American Pie. It's Chris Evans with the whipped cream around his junk, but he's got the banana. Yeah,
it's a spoof on all the 80s teen movies. Yeah.
You know what? Because there was one of those movies they wanted me to play the Nacho Libre guy. I don't remember which movie it was. And I didn't want to do it. Well, I should have done it, and then we'd be pals.
You can follow Frank Caliendo. You can follow Frank Caliendo, and you can grade his impressions. He loves that.
Oh, God, why?
just kidding. At Frank Caliendo. And wait, let me see if I can get this. It's C Alien Do. If you don't know how to pronounce, whatever, Caliendo. He is bringing up the next generation of impressionists in his household, and we ran out of time. It always flies with you, buddy, to talk about your ping pong game. And before we go, again, please, because it really, truly is a hilarious podcast. Where can people find what you're doing?
The Caliendo Cast, you can find it at caliendocast.com. It's on iTunes and everything right now as well. And there's always promos and stuff for it on social media, but caliendocast.com, thecaliendocast.com, all kinds of stuff. And hey, maybe if you can hook me up with your doctor expert, I want to talk to somebody like that too at some point. So
absolutely.
You said a state senator, right?
State senator out here in California, just an absolute genius. We can talk off air, and I'll get you his info.
Yeah, I might listen. I'm probably going to listen into that. That's awesome.
No, please don't.
Thank you, Frank.
I'm going to feel Frank Caliendo, everybody. Yeah! Hey, Frank Caliendo.
There he is.
Don't be a stranger.